Every World Cup has them. The teams nobody's talking about, the ones not on the billboards, not trending on social media, not getting the documentary treatment. While everybody's obsessing over Messi, Mbappe, and whether Ronaldo still has it at 41. There's always a group of sides quietly sharpening their knives in the background, waiting for the moment the cameras finally swing their way. They're the dark horses. Not the favorites. Not the minnows either. Something far more dangerous. Teams with genuine quality, genuine belief, and absolutely nothing to lose. And at the 2026 World Cup, with 48 teams, a brand new round of 32, and a format that was practically built to hand underdogs a lifeline, there has never been a better time to be flying under the radar. These are the dark horses of the 2026 World Cup, explained. Norway. Norway haven't been at a World Cup since 1998. 28 years of watching from the outside, 28 years of qualifying campaigns that ended in heartbreak, near misses, and a nation quietly asking itself when its time would finally come. Well, it came, and it brought Erling Haaland with it. The man who has been dismantling Premier League defenses for sport finally gets his World Cup moment. And everything about Norway's build-up suggested they weren't just happy to be here. In qualifying, they were ruthless, scoring 37 goals across just 8 matches, an average of over 4 a game, routing Italy twice in the process. Haaland alone contributed 16 of those qualifying goals, 2 a game, in international football, against European opposition. That is not normal. That is not something opposition analysts sleep while thinking about. In the tournament itself, they've continued where they left off, beating Iraq 4-1 on match day 1 before edging Senegal 3-2 in what turned into a proper contest. And this is the thing people need to understand about Norway. It is not a one-man show. Martin Odegaard pulls the strings in midfield with a composure that makes the whole team tick. Alexander Sorloth causes absolute chaos alongside Haaland up front. Julian Ryerson bombing down the right, Antonio Nusa stretching defenses. This squad has genuine depth and genuine quality at every level. If they get through their group and into the knockouts, nobody is going to want to draw them. Not France. Not anyone. Haaland has spent his entire career watching the World Cup on television. He did not come all this way just to lose in the group stage. Japan. Here is something worth remembering before you dismiss Japan. They have already beaten Germany and Spain at a World Cup. Not once, twice, in the same tournament, in Qatar 2022, in games that the entire footballing world assumed were foregone conclusions. That was not a glitch. That was not a lucky night where the keeper saved 4 penalties and the crossbar did the rest. That was a system, a pressing machine meticulously constructed by Hajime Moriyasu, executing its game plan to absolute perfection against 2 of the most decorated nations in the history of the sport. And at the 2026 World Cup, they are doing it again. Japan drew the Netherlands 2-2 before dismantling Tunisia 4-0, disciplined, purposeful, completely unbothered by whoever lines up against them. What makes this team so uncomfortable to face isn't any one superstar, it's the collective. The way they press from the first whistle to the last. The way they force mistakes from teams that should, on paper, comfortably have too much quality. Kaoru Mitoma running at defenders on the left with that low, almost untrackable center of gravity. Kito Nakamura pulling the strings from deeper positions. These are players who start regularly at top European clubs, not unknowns. Every team remaining in this tournament knows exactly what Japan did to Germany and Spain in Qatar. Every coaching staff has watched the footage. And it almost doesn't matter, because Japan will press regardless, and somewhere deep in this knockout bracket, a bigger name is going to get caught sleeping. Again. Colombia. Colombia walk into this tournament with arguably the most dangerous counter-attacking setup in the entire field, and most people are too busy talking about Argentina and Brazil to notice. Luis Diaz, who just finished one of the best seasons of his career, at Bayern Munich, yes, Bayern Munich, is the kind of winger that simply cannot be legislated for when he gets space to run. Explosive, unpredictable, capable of producing something from nothing in the blink of an eye. He is the sort of player who keeps opposition managers awake at 2 a.m. rearranging their defensive shape on a whiteboard. And then there is James Rodriguez, a player many wrote off entirely after a difficult spell away from Europe's top leagues, only for him to show up at Copa America 2024 and remind the entire sport exactly why he won the Golden Boot at Brazil 2014. Colombia have already qualified from their group, 6 points from 2 games, beating Uzbekistan 3-1 and DR Congo 1-0, with Daniel Munoz chipping in goals from right back and Richard Rios bossing the midfield. They lead Group K going into a final game against Portugal that they only need a draw from to finish first. This is a side built to absorb pressure and then hurt you on the break with pace and precision that most teams in this tournament simply cannot live with over 90 minutes. In a 40-18 World Cup where the knockout bracket can throw up wildly lopsided matchups, a Colombia team built to punish overconfident opponents could go very, very deep. Nobody is mentioning them in the same breath as the favorites. That is exactly how they like it. Egypt. Mohamed Salah is going to retire from international football as a legend, and it might be at this World Cup that the final chapter of that legacy gets properly written. Egypt have been one of the genuine surprise packages of the group stage. They drew Belgium 1-1, then beat New Zealand 3-1 to register what was Egypt's first ever World Cup win. Let that sink in for a moment. Egypt's first ever World Cup win. A country with a football culture going back nearly a century, a nation that produced one of the game's genuine world-class superstars in Salah, and it took until 2026 for them to win a single match at the tournament. That victory meant something that went far beyond 3 points. They currently lead Group G, ahead of Belgium, and if Salah is firing, the Liverpool Salah, the one who takes games by the scruff of the neck and refuses to let go, Egypt become a side that genuinely nobody in this knockout bracket wants to meet. Salah at 34 is still one of the 5 best attacking players in club football. Ask anyone at Liverpool. At a World Cup with his country, in what could well be his last appearance on the biggest stage, that kind of motivation does not go on a team sheet, but it absolutely shows up in the 89th minute of a knockout game when everything is on the line. Egypt are here. They are not tourists. Australia. Turkey came into this World Cup as one of the most fashionable dark horse picks in European football. Talented squad, genuine technical quality, experienced players performing at the highest level in club football. And yet Australia looked at all of that, stepped onto the pitch, and beat them 2-0 with something approaching contempt. Turkey had 30 shots. 30. And still went home with nothing, because the Socceroos outworked them so comprehensively that quality became almost irrelevant. That is Australia's entire identity at this tournament, and at every tournament they've ever been good at, distilled into one perfect 90 minutes. Australia's blueprint is not pretty. They will not dazzle you. There will be no 10-minute spell where you suddenly think you're watching peak Barcelona. But they will outrun you, outpress you, and expose you on the counter before you've registered that you've made a mistake. The tactical DNA that took them to the round of 16 in Qatar, where they nearly dragged Argentina to extra time, is fully intact. Harry Souter commanding at the back, Matthew Leckie still a weapon on the break, a generation of players that has quietly built one of international football's most organized defensive structures. Nobody gives Australia a prayer in the knockout rounds. Nobody ever does. They've also made a habit, year after year, tournament after tournament, of proving people spectacularly wrong. Morocco. At what point does a dark horse stop being a dark horse? That is the genuine question with Morocco, because they reached the semi-finals in 2022, became the first African nation ever to do so, and yet somehow arrive at this tournament still slightly flying under the radar compared to the true favorites. That 2022 run was not a fluke built on a hot week and a couple of lucky deflections. It was the result of meticulous defensive organization, a relentless work ethic that made the Atlas Lions one of the hardest teams in the world to break down, and a front line capable of punishing anyone on the transition. Those qualities haven't gone anywhere. In this group stage, Morocco drew Brazil 1-1, Brazil, who have looked dominant against everyone else, then beat Scotland 1-0 and thrashed Haiti 4-2 to top their group with 7 points. Achraf Hakimi, one of the most dangerous right-backs in world football, continues to contribute at both ends of the pitch in a way very few defenders anywhere on the planet can match. This squad knows what it feels like to go deep at a World Cup. They carry that experience into every game now. The Atlas Lions are not making up numbers. They are not a feel-good story. They are a genuine contender who have earned the right to be treated as one. And any team that walks into a knockout game against Morocco thinking they're the easier side of the bracket is going to find out exactly how wrong that assumption is. Cape Verde. Let's talk about Cape Verde for a moment, because what they have done at this World Cup is genuinely, historically extraordinary, and it deserves to be said plainly. Cape Verde is a nation of just over 500,000 people. That is roughly the population of a mid-sized European city. They have never been to a World Cup before. They came in rank 67th in the world, as first-time participants, with no experience of this stage and no roadmap for what was coming. And on their very first group game, they held Spain, the reigning European champions, to a 0-0 draw. Spain had 27 shots. 27. And Cape Verde's goalkeeper Vozinha, a name the entire footballing world now knows, turned in one of the individual performances of the entire tournament, keeping every single one of them out. Then they went and drew Uruguay 2-2 days later. In 2 group games as World Cup debutants, Cape Verde have taken 4 points off 2 serious footballing nations, one of whom are former world champions. They play their final group game against Saudi Arabia still with a chance of progressing. And if they make it through to the knockouts, Cape Verde become one of the most compelling stories in the entire history of this competition, not just a dark horse, but an actual fairy tale, unfolding in real time on the biggest stage in sport. And the most remarkable thing? They look like they belong. Not scrambling. Not relieved just to be there. Belonging. Switzerland. Switzerland do not do drama. They do not do flamboyance, they do not get viral moments, and they do not make the back pages for the right reasons. What they do, consistently, relentlessly, almost robotically, is win, and then quietly move on to the next game and do it again. In this group stage they drew Qatar 1-1 before beating Bosnia and Herzegovina 4-1 and then topping the group by dismantling co-hosts Canada 3-1. 7 points. Group winners. Quietly, efficiently, ruthlessly composed. The footballing equivalent of doing your taxes correctly on the first attempt and never mentioning it again. Switzerland have reached the knockout rounds at 8 of the last 9 major tournaments they've competed in. Under Murat they went to the Euro 2024 quarterfinals, where England needed a penalty shootout to eliminate them, and that same squad, battle-hardened by that experience, is now in the knockout bracket of a World Cup. They are not the sexiest pick. Nobody is building a fantasy team around Swiss players for the excitement. But in knockout football, where one mistake ends everything, where defensive structure and game management matter every bit as much as individual talent, Switzerland are precisely the kind of team that quietly eliminates someone's favorite and then looks mildly unsurprised about the whole thing. Every single tournament. Without fail. Senegal. Senegal's group stage has been painful. Back-to-back losses. 1-3 to France, then 2-3 to Norway in a game they were level and right up until the final moments, have left them needing a win against Iraq in their final group game just to keep their World Cup alive as one of the best third-place teams. It has not gone to plan. But the squad AUSTRIA has assembled is far too good to simply be written off, because when Senegal find their rhythm, they are a deeply uncomfortable side to play against. Sadio Mane and Kalidou Koulibaly are still there, the veterans, the leaders, the players who know what this shirt means and what this stage demands. And surrounding them, a new generation with real quality: Iliman Ndiaye at Everton, Nicholas Jackson on loan at Bayern Munich, El Hadji Malik Diouf at West Ham, Habib Diarra at Sunderland. These are not French players scraping for minutes. These are footballers competing week in, week out at the highest level of European club football. If Senegal find a way through, if they beat Iraq and squeeze into the knockout rounds, they become one of the most dangerous unseeded teams left in the tournament. A side with the quality to hurt anyone, a point to prove after a difficult group stage, and the kind of collective pride that makes African national teams at major tournaments feel like they're playing every match for something larger than football. That combination, in a knockout format, is exactly what upsets are made of. United States. The United States are hosting this World Cup, and for the first time in a long time, possibly ever, they have the squad to properly match the occasion. Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Folarin Balogun, Anthony Robinson. These are not journeymen making up the numbers. These are footballers starting regularly at some of the biggest clubs in Europe's top leagues. The USMNT opened with a 4-1 win over Paraguay before backing it up with a 2-0 victory over Australia, and there's a genuine sense that something is fundamentally different about this generation compared to every previous American World Cup squad. They have not just improved athletically. They have improved technically, tactically, and perhaps most importantly, mentally. Host nations at a World Cup carry a weight of expectation that can crush the best prepared sides. But they also receive an energy from playing in front of their own supporters that no away team can replicate. The United States, playing in sold-out stadiums across the country, with a generation of players who grew up watching the sport explode in popularity on their soil, this genuinely could be the tournament that changes everything for football in America. Permanently. And if Balogun keeps finding the net, and Pulisic keeps producing the moments that remind everyone why he is the best American footballer of his generation, the knockout bracket is going to be a very difficult place for whoever draws the USMNT. Mexico. Mexico have not won a World Cup knockout game since 1986. 40 years. 4 decades of the Quinto Partido curse, El Quinto Partido, the 5th game, the round of 16 exit that became so predictable it started feeling less like heartbreak and more like tradition. An entire generation of Mexican football fans grew up knowing, deep down, that their team would win the group stage and then go home at the next hurdle. But 2026 might genuinely be different, and the evidence is already there. Mexico stormed through their group without dropping a single point, beating South Africa 2-0, South Korea 1-0, and Czechia 3-0, winning Group A with 9 points and a +6 goal difference that doesn't flatter them. They have looked commanding, composed, and hungry in a way that previous Mexican tournament sides haven't quite managed. The crowd at Estadio Azteca roaring them on is not a minor detail. It is one of the most intimidating atmospheres in world football, a place where opposing teams have lost their minds and their game plans simultaneously. Veterans Edson Alvarez and Raul Jimenez are playing with the urgency of men who know this might be their last chance to rewrite Mexican football history. And the young talent emerging alongside them, including teenage midfielder Gilberto Mora, who has caught the eye throughout the group stage, suggests this is a squad with a future as well as a present. The curse has to break sometime. Everything about this tournament suggests this might be when it finally does. South Africa. There are stories at every World Cup that nobody sees coming, and South Africa might just be the story of this entire tournament. Bafana Bafana had never made the knockout rounds of a World Cup before this one. Not once in their history. In 2010, hosting the tournament on their own soil, in front of their own people, they went out in the group stage and watched the rest of the competition from the sidelines. Every subsequent campaign ended the same way. Gone before the real tournament began. And then came the final group game of 2026. A 63rd minute strike from Thapelo Masiko that catapulted South Africa above South Korea and into the round of 32 for the very first time in their history. You can only imagine the scenes. You can only imagine what that moment meant. South Africa now carry an entire nation's weight of history into the knockout rounds. And in football, that kind of emotional weight is not a burden. That is jet fuel. Nobody came into this tournament with a South Africa game plan. Nobody has spent 3 weeks filming their defensive shape and constructing a detailed tactical breakdown of how to break them down. They are the unknown quantity in the bracket, and unknown quantities, in knockout football, are exactly what upsets are built from. Bafana Bafana are not just making history by being here. They are making it with every single minute they remain in this tournament. Uruguay. Uruguay are a football nation that has been punching considerably above its weight for a century, and they show absolutely no signs of stopping. 3 million people. 2 World Cup titles. A mentality that refuses, on a structural level, to accept that any game is unwinnable against any opponent on any day. In this group stage they have drawn Saudi Arabia 1-1 and Cape Verde 2-2, results that, on paper, look underwhelming for a squad of their pedigree and experience. But Uruguay at a World Cup is never just about results going in. It is about what a side is building toward as the tournament finds its rhythm, and what they become once the knockout rounds strip everything back to pure football. Darwin Núñez, Rodrigo Bentancur, Federico Valverde. This is a squad with genuine world-class quality running through it at every level. Players performing week in, week out at the very top of European club football. And La Celeste play with a grit and a physical intensity that makes them deeply, genuinely uncomfortable to face in one-off games where there is no second chance. Nobody in South America fears a knockout draw against Uruguay. Nobody outside South America fully respects how dangerous they actually are. That gap, between perception and reality, is a gap Uruguay have been quietly exploiting for 100 years. They are not done here. They are never done here. Austria. Austria might be the most overlooked team in the entire tournament, and that is saying something in a 48-team field that includes first-time qualifiers and debutant nations. Quietly dangerous, consistently underestimated, with a squad that is considerably more capable than most pundits have been willing to acknowledge. They beat Jordan 3-1 in their opening group game before coming up against Argentina, who beat them 2-0 in a game that was closer than the scoreline suggests. And they still have Algeria to face in what is effectively a playoff for second place in Group J. 3 points, still alive, still dangerous. Ralf Rangnick has spent years building Austria into one of the most tactically coherent national teams in European football. High press, vertical transitions, a midfield engine room that simply does not give you a moment on the ball. Marcel Sabitzer, Konrad Laimer, Christoph Baumgartner. These are midfielders playing every week for Bayern Munich and RB Leipzig. They are not unknowns, and the system they operate within at international level is one of the most demanding and effective in the game. Austria have never gone deep at a World Cup, and that absence of expectation is precisely what makes them dangerous right now. The pressure is not on them. The spotlight is not on them. Rangnick has a knockout game plan ready, the squad has the quality to execute it. And somewhere in the bracket, a more celebrated side is going to find out about Austria the hard way. Quietly. There you have it, 15 teams flying completely under the radar while the cameras follow Messi and Mbappe around. The dark horses. The ones built not for the spotlight, but for the precise moment the spotlight suddenly finds them, and they're already halfway to the final. The 2026 World Cup has 48 teams, a brand new round of 32, and more opportunities than ever before for a shock nobody saw coming. These 15 will be right at the center of it. If you enjoyed this, subscribe cause I'll be posting a lot more. Thanks for watching.